This is my first formal talk in a scientific meeting that involves linkage of modern science and ancient science, and you will see what we can do. So my first author is based in India at an organization called World Community Service Center. It's in Tamil Nadu, the state of Tamil Nadu, and that's where the experimental work was done that I'm going to share with you. I'm based here, and we have started an organization here in the US, World Community Service Center, USA.
This is modern technology.
Oh, I see.
Soon we'll get to the real thing.
Try it now, it should work. Just go ahead and try the remote. Yeah, there we go.
Most of you would know that the harmful effects of chemical and biotechnological agriculture on people and the environment is mounting. And on top of that, we have food shortages and water shortages and contamination. So it's a very big problem which is emerging worldwide, not just in the US. So we need a paradigm shift, a big paradigm shift to replace this existing hazardous chemical agriculture. And you heard a talk on pharmaceuticals 2 days ago. And we need safe practices. So how do we combine, what's the way to approach this very challenging situation? So many of you know Bruce Lipton. We were introduced to his work only a few weeks ago. He documents in his book, Biology of Belief, that cutting-edge research shows that specific frequencies and patterns of EM radiation regulate DNA, RNA, protein synthesis, on and on. And I have given you a page number. Even more interestingly, he, based on some published work 40 years ago, he is saying that the electromagnetic frequencies are 100 times more efficient in regulating the cell behavior and relaying the environmental information than physical or chemical signals. This is pretty amazing. So based on this, the overarching hypothesis of our research is that EM energy input to crops can greatly increase yield without any of the health and environmental hazards that chemical agriculture has introduced. So we have very specific agenda to pursue this. So that's what I'll be showing you. So I want to now take you a little bit, I'll be going back and forth between ancient Indian practices and science and the modern science. So in ancient India, my colleague who comes from a farming family, that the farmers used to offer worship to soil, water, sun, seeds, farm implements, farm animals before they started cultivating their land. This is something quite well established and only farmers would know. So today what I will show based on this research is supports evidence that how your mind influences the outcome of your planting. There has been some recent work at Tamil Nadu Egg University. There is a product called Panchagavya, which is dates back to the science of Ayurveda, but this was designed for plants, and the term is Vriksha Ayurveda. Vriksha simply means plants, and Ayurveda is the science of life for plants. So Panchagavya is a product of cow, from cow containing 5 elements: milk, curd, ghee, dung, and urine. in some holistic combinations. And so the new research which has been carried out at Tamil Nadu Egg University in Coimbatore and by Yadav et al., they have shown that how PG contains micronutrients, steroids, vitamins, and several other compounds, and they enhance plant growth. So we are, so this ancient product, I will show you in our experiment, we use this product to look at the effect along with other things. Okay, let me give you a quick review of the literature. The first experiment was published by Bose, J.C. Bose in Nature in 1919, and showing that how plants respond to electromagnetic energy stimuli. A very nice paper. You can look at it. This is. Then I have done some research, very little. I found a nice reference by Vecheter. This is part of a PhD minor paper at York University. It's a review of literature showing that BioEM, bioelectromagnetic, and Qi, which is used in Chinese holistic healing, they are closely related. And he documents that. If you have not seen, it's really an excellent reference. The first study on the use of thought involving the BioEM is by Rajendran et al. That was done in India. Dr. Rajendran was head of department at one of the specialities at Coimbatore at Tamil Nadu Egg University. And what he found that plants developed resistance against root knot nematodes. They injected root knot nematodes. They did this experiment, replications, and this is a published paper. I have a list of references I'll show you, so anybody is interested, you can talk to me after that. And finally, Lipton says that groundbreaking experiments show the influence of environment on cells. So we can think of electromagnetic energy as an environmental input. So we expect cells to respond. Now let me take you back to ancient science of non-duality. This is indeed ancient, and I don't have that much time to spend, but I'll just give you a few bullets. In the idea of Qi, or in India what they call life force, is a functional state of body which is fundamental to ancient science. Sages discovered that, they wrote extensively about that. Vecheter reviews that. More recently, with Hatri, who we have affiliated with for 40 years, he published many books, but two books I have referenced here for this audience. One is Journey of Consciousness and other is Biomagnetism. He defined life force as a group of very minute energy force particles which are running around in your body, and they generate what we call biomagnetism. That is experience in the meditation. We don't have any, if anybody is interested, you're welcome to meet with us, and we'll give you a live demonstration about your biomagnetism. So it will make it very concrete that we are not really talking about some hypothetical stuff. So there has been one book published in India. They did EEG experiment. Mr. Damodaran, he did it on himself, and he recorded that the stages of 4 meditations that are taught in simplified Kundalini Yoga, they relate to these 4 frequencies. Beta is a normal frequency that is our working state frequency. Alpha, 8 to 13 cycles per second. Theta and delta. And Bruce Lipton in his book mentions that programming in the early ages for children happens at the theta and delta frequencies, and that controls 95% of your life, including diseases and so on. It's very fascinating. So the point I'm making is that through sky meditation, you can access this frequency. We teach that systematically without involving any gurus and all that. This is an secular knowledge, and it dates back to ancient science. So I put two hypotheses here for this talk, that BioEM energy is much stronger in low mental frequencies than in normal. So in giving thought transactions to the crop, we are actually using bioelectromagnetic energy. This is the second hypothesis, just to put this thing in some context. Okay, let's start with, so what we did, there were two experiments conducted at the Temple of Consciousness in South India, and we wanted to study the effect of Panchagavya that I explained to you a little bit, and BioEM energy through thought transaction. The crop was Okra. It's a hybrid crop. It's a short-term crop, 19 to 120 days, so we could harvest things and actually take measurements. So here is some statistics for you. Sowing date was 7/7/2010. Randomized block is design of experiments. There were 6 treatments, I'll explain in a minute. 4 replications in experiment 1, so we wanted to repeat ourselves, make sure that we are not doing this thing, this is done properly. Plot size about 4 meters to 5 meters. Experiment 2, number of treatments 3, replication 7. That was designed after we got results from experiment 1, so 3 replications we cut out, they were not needed. So let me explain what these treatments were. All thoughts were transected in theta frequency because my first author is a senior sky professor. He is director of research and development in World Community Service Center. So he is completely qualified to do that. So first treatment was thought transacted for 2 minutes. Second treatment, thought transacted for 5 minutes. Third treatment, thought transacted for 2 minutes, and 3% spray of Panchagavya. So you are combining these two. 5-minute thought transacted with 3% spray of Panchagavya. Treatment 5, only Panchagavya, no thoughts. And finally, the untreated control. So we have 6 experiments to really look at the effect of what's going on. Procedure was that the first author gave thought transaction on all plots except the control between 6:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. That's when the energy is good, you're not tired, and this was done, as I mentioned to you, at the Temple of Consciousness in Aliyar. The experiment was continued for 60 days, and crop was harvested. For treatments 3, T3 and T4, 3% Panchagavya was sprayed between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. at 10-day interval. The yield of pods was recorded from 1st to the 8th harvest over this 60-day period. And observations were also made on pesticides while this was going on. There is absolutely no use of any chemicals or pesticides or herbicides, nothing. It's a purely electromagnetic and organic experiment. But he was recording because being a biologist, he was observing what goes on these crops. So I'll show you one figure that this is taken, the growth of the okra. I have don't have time to really give you more figures here that I have. So now let's look at, so this is experiment 1. I'm showing you, see if I can get this thing. So these are the 6 treatments. These are 4 replications, and the numbers are the yield of okra in kilogram. And in the end of this, we are giving you the mean, and standard deviation is calculated from all the samples combined together. And here we are showing you the percentage increase in yield. So please notice here, this is control. For Panchagavyam alone, which is T5, 68% increase in yield, which is pretty good, supports that why Indians developed this. The 2-minute thought transaction gives you 87.89% increase in yield. But when you go to T2, which is 5 minutes, the yield increases to 120.84. Then you go to T4 and T5, which is Panchagavyam 2 minutes, Panchagavyam combined with 5 minutes. The yields are about the same as in the T2, T3, and T4. In the second experiment, the results are very similar. We only use T2, T1 and against the control, and you see that the increase with T5 is 114%, and T1, which is 2-minute thought transaction, is 86% increase. You give you the standard deviation. The results of these two experiments are crop with treatments T2 and T3 and T4 gave approximately 120% increase in mean yield. T2 gave better yield than T1. T5, which is Panchagavya alone, mean yield only 68%, was the lowest compared to T1, T2, T3, and T4. Low incidence of sucking pest was found, which appeared in the second week after germination. Pests were totally suppressed by natural enemies like ladybird, beetle, and hoverflies. So it's a self-organizing system. So you have pests developing, but also the pest enemies were also developing, killing the pests without needing any pesticides. Experiment 2 gave similar results to experiment 1, so I won't say any more. The conclusions are plants respond well to the bioelectromagnetic energy. At 5-minute thought transaction, the mean yield is by 120% without requiring even Panchagavyam. Our results support previous findings of Lipton that EM is the most efficient way to increase yield. The combination of 5-minute and Panchagavyam did not give more yield than Panchagavyam, this TT alone, TT 5 minutes. The pest multiplication was naturally suppressed without requiring any pesticides. So it's possible, it's feasible to increase production without chemicals, without any of this junk which corporations are introducing, and increase human health. I was talking to John yesterday that human health is a very big issue. I will give you 3 sample questions. So I'm a water guy. Drought resistance is a very big issue. We want to conduct experiments that when you decrease water input, what happens to the yield? What's the maximum yield capacity? One of my biologist friend tells me that there's a distribution between root and shoots. So you cannot go on increasing yield forever. We want to know what's the limit given the soil types and water and temperatures and so on. So this is what I am saying, that what's the optimal environmental conditions. I like to acknowledge the sage scientist who was originator of this conveying this science, the meditation, the magnetism, the science of nature. I have more information on that if somebody is interested. Mr. Valanand is the president of WCSC in India. He helped provide, and my wife Indira and Jill Owens, she's a psychotherapist in Longmont, was very helpful in editing and referencing this research. So with that, this is the list of references for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take advantage of my having a microphone in my hand, to ask one question.
Please.
You used a particular meditation. Could you comment on, and you also used a very high-level practitioner. Could you comment on how practical it might be for people who are to do it themselves, learn how, or to use other forms of meditation?
This meditation is called Simplified Kundalini Yoga. Many of you we have been talking to work with Kundalini energy. There's been much written about it, but in this meditation, the side effects of Kundalini have been completely streamlined. So we teach you how to balance your Kundalini, and so you don't get into any trouble. And we teach you systematically. So for example, when we raise energy is by touch, but we can also do that by thought. We bypass these 4 centers in the middle. So we take your energy from Mooladhara to Agnya Chakra. You develop that, you feel your energy as a physical sensation, as throbbing feeling, so it's very distinct. After that, we take you back to Mooladhara, because Mooladhara is the normal seat of Kundalini. Everybody must know how to balance the energy in Mooladhara, so we teach you that, the second stage. So whenever you get into trouble, you are anxious or energy is not working with you, go to Mooladhara. We exactly teach you. Then we take you, so here the energy is working in alpha frequency. The third stage is we take you to theta frequency. This is called Sahasrara center. So the measurement of the Damodharan show that energy is in theta frequency. So Lakshmanan only needs to do this to do thought transaction on, and so on.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment that actually plant yield is not anymore a reliable way of determining how well the plant is doing. It's very common in agriculture in order to do that. But when you increase plant yield, what you usually do is you stress the plant, and therefore it becomes unhealthy. So there are 2 ways in order to determine
Can you speak to the mic, please?
There are 2 ways to determine plant health. One is through Brix readings, and the other is through plant sap. And so by using those, you can get objective measurements rather than just using plant yield, which is not necessarily a reliable indicator. And so I would suggest, and we could talk about that afterwards, about more objective ways in order to add to the science of this.
I will really appreciate that. We are very interested in getting this kind of input. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so my name is Nuzi Hanif, and my question is a sort of follow-up on Dr. Nelson's question. And I know you gave a brief description of the technique. I just wanted to know, you use the word thought. So is there actually a conscious thought involved in the thought transaction? And a related question is that I know that there is a technique the Chinese use, I've read about, that they like to call it mindful attention or meditation as opposed to mindless. And at one of the SSC conferences, there was a paper presented showing that in the mindful meditation, the frequency actually increased rather than decreased. So one question is there actually any thought involved? And secondly, do you think that it's possible for the frequency to actually increase and give similar results?
On the first question, the answer is yes. Professor Lakshman was actually telling the crops that may you be protected against the pests, may you produce good yield. So there was a positive thought given to the crops when he was doing this thought triangle for 2 minutes and 5 minutes. On the second thing, I really do not know enough to make any comment either way, but we can talk about this. I'll be very interested to find out. So,
Thank you very much.
okay, thank you.